Real Enigmas and Theories is back again with another video. Episode 201 of Severance did not disappoint, and we're gonna get right into the breakdown, theories, and some esoteric clues. But before we do that, get your snacks, tap that screen a couple times, and do all that good old YouTube stuff. Oh, don't forget to pull out your magnifying glasses. Let's cook. Starting right where we left off, Mark's Audi must have showed up to work, and we see Mark running through the hallways, and it seems like they've changed things around like a maze or maybe blocked off some of the rooms. At first, I thought Mark was lost, but it's because he ran straight for the wellness room instead of running to MDR. He ends up at a room with a faded welcome sign, and someone can be seen standing behind him. It kind of looks like Grainer in what appears to be a neck brace. Maybe he's been brought back. I don't know yet, but if that was Grainer, then Cobel still has someone on the inside because he was down for her like 4 flat tires. That might explain why the welcome screen on the computer still reads Miss Cobel, because someone could be hacking the system. Don't forget that Grainer's expertise was security, but he also analyzed Petey's chip, and that suggests that he has some technical experience as well. Mark makes it to MDR, only to see new refiners, and then Milchek enters the room with some blue balloons with Mark's face on them. Then he escorts Mark to the management office, and on the way, he tells Mark that 5 months have passed by. He also quotes one of Keir's lines, "We must be cut to heal," just like Cobel did. In season 1, Cobel says to Mark that you can shut the thing, and I noticed that Milchek says you can shut it. It's almost like they didn't want to say door. It appears that Milchek has moved into Cobel's office that day because you see him unpacking his stuff. And Miss Wong, who's one of the new characters who's actually being played by a little girl, says that it was her first day as supervisor. I don't think she's severed either. Milchek says that he isn't, and even though Harmony Cobel has a split persona, she isn't severed either. Maybe they keep the management whole, and Mrs. Wong probably attended the same school that Miss Cobel did. She stated that she was a crossing guard before this, but that could mean something totally different than what you may think it is. Just like the break room means something else than what it actually should be. Besides, what wouldn't any know about crossing guards anyway? None of them even bothered to ask what it was. That radical group that was passing out flyers did say that Lumon was testing on children, but the severance procedure leaves a split version of the person's mind, and I don't think that they would insert someone with a childlike mind as management. I mean, this girl's already a child, but it does seem like she has been brought up in the ways of Keir Egan. Milchek probably attended some sort of Lumon-funded school as well. And what if he started working there when he was around the same age? And the students in these various schools are prepped in various positions of management and then sent to different locations when they're ready. They're all probably trained in some sort of torturing methods as well, judging by the way they treat the innies, especially when they do the break room treatment. And that break room protocol definitely requires some patience that the average person doesn't have. Also in the Lumon Letters, the editor of the newspaper that Peg Kincaid was writing was also a Milchek, and he claimed to have an insider at Lumon. Maybe it was Seth, maybe not. Or maybe he has more family members that are down with the cause. We do know that there are other severed individuals outside the severed units at Lumon. And surely they have some unsevered devotees amongst the traditional working class. I mean, just look at the similarities between Wong and Milchek's personality. Both have this phony, friendly vibe that can switch at the drop of a hat. And they both do that cold, dark stare. Let me find out that Wong is the new Milchek. Just like Cobel and Milchek's relationship, Milchek and Wong do not seem to be in league with each other's common agenda. And you see this by the way he shuts the door on her, and also how she conceals the fact that she would rather play this water game than continue some sort of sorting task on her computer. I'm gonna just air this out real quick. Milchek was lying on Cobel, sitting there talking about a sadistic throuple. And he's a prime example about how making fake friends at work can come back to bite you in the ass. But shout out to Wong. She made it very clear from the door to Mark that she was not his friend during that red ball game. Look how she did that Milchek stare when she looked at him. I also noticed when Mark W was done with the ball, Wong told him to pass the ball to Mark S. It wasn't his choice like it usually is, where you can pick who you want to roll the ball to. She directed it. I think it was most likely a ploy to get Mark to divulge some of the information about what he picked up on during the overtime contingency. I mean, she had the ball at first and passed it to Mark W and then tells him to pass it on to Mark S. Why not just pass it to Mark S in the first place? But Mark was hip to the bullshit and caught on to the trick. He even hit her with that old fake laugh from season 1.
4 new friends today.
That's
before the melon bloat sets in.
Now, Mark W is one of these replacement refiners, and he indicates that Lumon uses different colors and floor plans for other locations. Mark W and Gwendolyn Y both worked at MDR, and the X5 branch would have been shut down. Gwendolyn said that 3 of the refiners said Wyoming on their intake survey, and we know that Helly said Delaware. And how does Gwendolyn know about buttes? One of the most famous buttes is in Wyoming. I know it's called Devil's Tower, but how would she know something like that? Peg Kincaid from the Lexington Letters was in Kansas, which also has many buttes as well. It's something that you see on the West Coast a lot. Gwendolyn indicates that her and Mark W are from a newer facility complete with dancing mechanical Egans in their perpetuity wing. The other refiner, Dario, said that his branch had brooms with plate on it for their Egan effigies. Even their CPR dummies were brooms, and the elevator was a rope. I'm thinking that it was one of those dumbwaiter pulley type deals. Moving right along, Mark ends up trying to frame Mark W for trying to sneak a message through to his Audi. But Mark S gets caught and ends up having to give Milchek a piece of his mind, or his half mind, however you look at it. He tricks the group into going into the kitchenette before making a mad dash for Milchek's office to make an attempt to speak to the board. He plugs up the speaker and then pleads with them to bring his friends back before being cut off by Milchek, who says the board doesn't converse with innies. So Milchek gets pissed off, sends Mark up the elevator, and here's where we get a real look at the perspective of what an innie's continuous loop of 9 to 5 looks like. They never know how much time has gone by. They only experience the time on the severed floor. And so we got to experience it like that during this episode. When Mark exits the elevator, he sees a new painting on the wall, and Dylan and Irv follow out the elevator shortly afterward. Irv runs off because he's still in shock from banging on Bert's door, and Dylan follows him and tries to stop him. And while Mark's standing there by himself by the elevator, Helly comes out. Now I'm gonna have to stop you right there. So you're telling me that just because Mark talks to the board, they make his friends come back and got them there all together just in time to be staggered one after the other just like that? Seems fishy. And that whole first 20 minutes of this episode with the replacement MDR was for 2 reasons. Those couple of days that Mark was sent to work with them was just to find out what Mark knew and if he would tell anybody what he saw. I just think it was kind of like plan A to get Mark to reveal all that he knew. I think bringing his friends back so fast was plan B. Milchek is clearly lying about the group becoming famous, and that newspaper is just some Photoshop bullshit they're using to flip the narrative. Mark going public about what's going on the severed floor includes him giving information about his supposed dead wife being trapped alive down there. And if that's the case, why wouldn't Lumon have just initiated the overtime contingency protocol and just woke him up and spoke to him before bringing him back to the severed floor? I mean, think about it. If you are Mark or the Audi or anybody's Audi, at any time, they could just wake you right up. You know what I'm saying? So you could be woke up anytime. You could be driving. You could be doing anything. So it just doesn't make sense on why they wouldn't have just done that. And why 5 months? So the first reason is to get information from Mark. The second was to give us a bunch of information and to show us a few things, because after Mark goes up the elevator, it's almost like the first part didn't even happen. I mean, those replacement refiners just came in, they dropped a bunch of information, and then they were gone. We got some great information, like the answers that other innies gave on their intake. More evidence that severed people have specific contextual knowledge about things that they shouldn't even know. We got information about other facilities. We seen somebody lurking around. Maybe that was Grainer or somebody new. Yeah, that first 20 minutes definitely gave us a few things to talk about. Anyway, they all make it to MDR and chat it up for a while before Wong comes in and tells them that Milchick is waiting on them in the break room. All 4 of them head out to the break room, and you can tell that they were having flashbacks about previous times of being in there. When they walk in the room, Milchick is there, standing there with that Mr. Crockett smile in a little personal small theater. And they're there to watch a stop motion movie about how they turned the table at Lumon and became famous. Mark says that the board must have agreed to his terms, and Milchick lies and confirms this notion by saying, "I guess so." The title of the film that they're watching is Lumon Is Listening, which I think has a double meaning. They're trying to convince MDR that their attempt to make contact with the outside has impacted Lumon in a positive way for the innies. I noticed a poster on the wall that says "grin and bared it," which is a word play on the saying "grin and bear it," which pretty much means to accept an unpleasant situation even though you know you can't do anything to change it. However, what does baird, spelled B-A-I-R-D, mean? The only thing that I can think of is John Baird was a Scottish inventor that actually lived during the time of Keir, and who most people say is the father of television. He demonstrated the world's first television system called the Baird televisor in 1926. I wonder if that's a nod to him or something else. And speaking of Keir, your boy is still doing this type of shit right here. But anyway, the video starts off with the Lumon building speaking and actually presenting the history of Branch 501 admin building since 1870. The building states that Lumon has operations in 206 countries in the world, but according to the United Nations, there are only 193. However, the National Olympic Committee recognizes 206 due to the focus on sports representation and governance, rather than strictly adhering to the political or diplomatic definitions of a nation state. That may be how Lumon structures its business as well. Or this could be a nod to the Olympic logo, which is a series of vesica piscis. The vesica piscis is known as the Great Portal or an opening. A lumen is a measurement of light, but it's also another word for an opening or a portal or a window. Lumon also has vesica piscis representation in its global oblate spheroid logo. This could be a Severance universe thing or a hidden message. We also get some Baphomet symbolism with the flame on top of Irv's head. That's like the flame on top of the Baphomet's head. And by the way, they did old girl dirty with this doll right here. I mean, they could have did something. They could have did something better than this, man. Come on, why y'all do old girl like that? This shit look like the crackhead from Moral Oral. And it also looks like they're gonna be putting some crack in these vending machines. The building also spilled the beans about Helly and Mark's kiss. But then Mark tells them about Gemma being Miss Casey. And I'm like, damn, Mark is on it. He got Miss Casey, Helly. He even smashed his sister's midwife. I mean, and Milchick is putting a rumor out there that Miss Selvage wanted to get on some of the action too. I mean, shit. Not to mention, when you think about it, Gwendolyn was getting a little bit curious over there, asking all them damn questions and shit. Let me find out Mark's out here packing them up. Anyway, we got a little bit of goat symbolism and white rabbit symbolism. And there's also a poster on the wall referencing Frolic, which is one of the four tempers, and has two people having a drink. And after the movie, Milchick says to the group that maybe one day he'll buy one of them a drink at the bistro. I thought that was a little interesting. So Milchick claims that the break room isn't bugged with no microphones or anything and leaves. And this is where Mark tells the group what he saw on the outside. He tells them the whole truth. Helly straight up lies about what she saw. And I was thinking, maybe they woke her up to discuss something with her, or probably persuade her not to say anything, or maybe she didn't want the guys to know that she was a part of the family that has them trapped down there. Who knows? I mean, she did try to tell the audience about the severed floor, but the funny shit was when Irv was reluctant to tell the group what he saw, she encouraged him and even said if it was bad, it's still okay. So her shit was bad and it wasn't okay. She obviously didn't mean that. Could Helly now be a part of the game too? I don't know, but just all of a sudden, the person that was ready to delete theirself in order to leave wants to stay and help the guy that she has feelings for find out what happened to his Audie's wife. That makes no sense. I could tell that Irv still didn't trust the room not being bugged because he waited until they left the room to give Dylan a hug and tell him what he saw. He didn't tell him everything, but he spoke about the paintings and him painting that hallway with the test room elevator. I wish he would have said something about the list of employees and shit that he has, but maybe that'll come later. Irv was seriously considering leaving before Dylan talked him down. And then Milchick sends Wong to summon Dylan to come to his office and reveals a hidden room with plans for a family any meeting place. Now, this is just how Milchick is trying to draw a wedge between the group by giving one something that the others doesn't have and keeping it a secret. And by the end of the episode, MDR is all sitting there like a happy team, ready to work with each other, with the partitions all the way down so that they can see each other's faces. Mark has been the only one to be totally honest with the group. He's got no secrets. Helly, Irv, and Dylan all have something they're holding back from the group. So the four tempers are back together again, refining data and clearing all of the four tempers. And in the very last shot, we see Miss Casey as a backdrop behind some refinement dashboard data, and her face is right where the numbers would go. Her hair is pulled back and she's not wearing any kind of distinctive clothing. But this is not Mark's actual screen, but it's indicating that there's a monitor somewhere else that has this data or information that is synonymous to what is on Mark's screen. I believe you could see the 68%, and this is indicating that this is two different screens. To me, this suggests that MDR may be dealing with the actual consciousness of individuals on the testing floor and possibly in other places. This probably controls them and refines whatever process is used on these individuals' consciousness. Maybe that truck blowing up in New York from the Lexington Letters was someone being controlled by the refining. Kinda reminds you of the trucks blowing up this year and shit. But nah, the Lexington Letters came out years ago, right? There are also theories out there that suggest the board members could be disembodied consciousness of Keir and his descendants. Their consciousness could also be a part of the refining process. And this ties directly back to the conversation that Mark was having with the replacement MDR employees about their different effigies in their perpetuity wings. Dario said that his was made out of brooms, and the team from the X5 branch had moving effigies, like little mechanical robots. Maybe it levels all the way up to the actual consciousness being ready to be placed inside of a body or a clone. At the end of season 1, we see Mark realize that his Audie's wife is alive. But is that her real body? And if it is her real body, that would mean that somehow Lumon's connections go deep into law enforcement, hospitals, politics, courtrooms, media, and more. And that's just to acquire her real body. And from what we've seen, that's not even a far-fetch for real. Another theory could be that Gemma was possibly severed before her accident, which could be the reason why Lumon was interested in her in the first place. And speaking of Lumon's connections to the media, in the Lexington Letters, Peg Kincaid said that she was a school bus driver and accidentally drove into a ditch. And when another bus came to evacuate the children, she waited for the towing to get her bus, and she said out loud, "Screw this job," or something to that effect. And instantly, a Lumon recruitment ad came on the radio and got her attention. Could this be the same thing that happened to Mark? Because how did Lumon's severed procedure get on Mark's radar for him to even consider something like that? It was probably through the same type of advertisement. That new introduction video was entitled Lumon Is Listening. And how many times have you said something out loud and then you see an ad for that shit right after? I mean, our phones, our TVs, Alexa, all that shit's listening. So you know Lumon is. Something else Mark W. said that was interesting, that he was surprised to have woken up to be in a different facility after his branch was shut down. This was a different building because they had two different perpetuity wings. And this would imply that his bosses told him that the building was going to shut down, because how else would he have known that? And this brings the question about what is really going on the outside if you got Lumon facilities with a higher technology level than the one that Mark is at shutting down, and why the 5 months? Milchick could be lying about that shit too. Now let's look at this for a minute. When Mark first exits the elevator, he's right in the middle of screaming about Miss Casey being alive and on the severed floor. And he realizes that he's back at work and runs straight for the wellness room. When Dylan exits the elevator, he seems to be right where he left off, being sent to the elevator after being tackled by Milchick. You can hear Irv banging on the elevator door, just like we left him at Bert's front door banging. But Helly didn't seem to be right at the point where we left her. No, She didn't seem to be in the middle of spilling the beans about being tortured down there. I think they probably woke her up and talked to her just being who she is. I even think that she seen another video from her outie, and that's why she was so serious when talking to Mark about not being like them. I believe that she does care for Mark and might be trying to protect him by staying. Maybe she was threatened before coming back. I mean, this girl is next in line. Why would a request from a severed employee be enough to get a big shot like her to come back after being summoned by a commoner? Something bigger definitely has to be at play here. So there we have it. Severance episode 201 is in the books, and I cannot wait for the next one. I don't get the episodes early, so I'm watching each one with you all out there. As expected, the acting was top tier. I love how they kept us on the severed floor the entire episode. That made the experience feel like I was one of the employees, so an A+ for storytelling. The new characters were interesting and brought a lot of information and even more mystery. The set designers went crazy this season so far by expanding on the retro aesthetic. Milchick's blueprint room, the projector, and that stop motion animation was funny as hell. I think Ben Stiller was the voice on that. I know he was the voice for Keir in the first season. So the next 8 weeks are looking like Severance for the win. Season 2 is in the clip and they just bust off the first bullet. I give it a 10 based off the jewels they dropped alone. Anyway, just a little something to think about while we wait on the next episode. That's all for my video today. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.